Welcome to District Command Central, your go-to source for the latest news and updates on the Washington Commanders. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, so you never miss a play. The rumor started quietly, almost like a whisper sliding through message boards and late-night streams. But it quickly grew into something that felt impossible to ignore. The idea of Brian Burns aligning himself with the Washington Commanders has sent shockwaves through conversations among fans, analysts, and insiders who love to read between the lines. Nothing has been confirmed in an official sense, but the smoke feels heavy enough to suggest that fire might be nearby. From the outside, this move makes sense in ways that feel both strategic and slightly intimidating, especially when you consider the direction the franchise has been hinting at. Since Dan Quinn took over the defensive reins, Burns represents more than just a pass rusher. He symbolizes speed, disruption, and a kind of defensive fear that can alter how entire offenses prepare their game plans. When people around the league start connecting dots, they see a Commanders team that might be quietly assembling something dangerous. The conversations are less about celebration and more about disbelief, because this kind of addition feels like a statement. It tells everyone that Washington may be done rebuilding quietly and is ready to start reshaping its identity through sheer defensive force. Even if everything is still wrapped in speculation, what really fuels this rumor is how perfectly Burns seems to fit the philosophy that Dan Quinn has been preaching since his arrival. Quinn has always been about relentless pressure, about defenders who can attack from unexpected angles, and never give quarterbacks a moment to breathe. Brian Burns embodies that chaos. He is the type of player who forces coordinators to redraw protections and keeps offensive tackles awake at night. People close to the situation have been suggesting that Washington has been looking for a centerpiece defender, someone who can be the face of an aggressive unit, and Burns checks every box. The thought of him lining up in a system that encourages creativity and speed feels almost unfair. Fans are imagining stunts, blitzes, and edge rushes that turn games into battles of survival for opposing offenses. Even as a rumor, the idea carries weight because it aligns so cleanly with what Quinn has done everywhere he has coached. This is not just about talent, but about philosophy. And that is why the speculation feels so believable and so unsettling for the rest of the league. Another layer that makes this situation feel real is the timing and the silence. Sometimes the loudest confirmations come from what is not being said. There has been a noticeable absence of strong denials from the usual voices, and that vacuum allows imaginations to run wild. Within that space, people are constructing scenarios where the Commanders' defense transforms overnight into something that commands respect. Burns would not arrive alone in impact, because his presence would elevate everyone around him. Interior linemen would face fewer double teams, linebackers would find clearer lanes, and defensive backs could afford to be more aggressive knowing pressure is coming. This ripple effect is what has analysts whispering that this could be the most important defensive move Washington has flirted with in a long time. Even as a rumor, it paints a picture of a defense that does not simply react, but dictates terms. That kind of identity shift is rare, and when it happens, it often starts with one bold acquisition that changes how opponents prepare mentally before they even step on the field. For the fanbase, this rumor has ignited a mix of excitement and cautious optimism. Longtime supporters of the Commanders have learned to guard their emotions, especially when big names are attached to their team in speculative headlines. Yet, there is something different about this story. It feels grounded, almost logical, rather than purely hopeful. Burns is at a stage in his career where chasing impact and legacy matters, and Washington offers a platform where he could be the undisputed focal point of a defense. People are talking about jerseys, about defensive nicknames, about a unit that finally reflects the toughness the city wants to see. Even skeptics admit that the fit is intriguing. The conversations are not about whether Burns is good enough, but about how terrifying the defense could become if this actually happens. That shift in tone says a lot. When doubt turns into strategic discussion, rumors begin to feel less like fantasies and more like previews of something imminent around the league. Offensive coordinators would be foolish not to take this rumor seriously, even unconfirmed. The mere possibility forces preparation and contingency planning. That is the power of a player like Burns. His reputation alone can alter how teams allocate resources and attention. The idea of pairing his explosiveness with Quinn's aggressive mindset has analysts sketching worst-case scenarios for offenses. Imagine protection sliding his way, only to open vulnerabilities elsewhere. Imagine quarterbacks forced into rushed decisions, knowing that pressure is inevitable. This is why the word frightening keeps coming up in discussions, not because of hype, but because of the tactical nightmare such a defense could create. Washington has not always been a team that opponents fear. But this rumor suggests a shift toward becoming exactly that. Fear changes games before they even begin. And that psychological edge might be what the Commanders are truly chasing. As the speculation continues, one thing becomes clear: whether or not this move is finalized, it has already changed the narrative around Washington. People are no longer talking about patience or gradual improvement, they are talking about impact, dominance, and identity. Burns represents a shortcut to relevance on the defensive side of the ball. And that is why this rumor refuses to die. Every passing moment without denial adds fuel. Every subtle comment from insiders becomes a clue. It feels like the calm before a storm, where everyone senses something big but waits for the official thunder. If Brian Burns does end up in Washington, it will not just be a transaction. It will be a declaration. Until then, the rumor itself continues to loom, casting a shadow that makes the Commanders' defense feel terrifying even before anything is signed. In the second half of this story, the focus shifts toward what this potential move would mean for Dan Quinn personally. Because this is where the speculation becomes almost cinematic. Quinn has built his reputation on defenses that swarm, hit hard, and impose their will. Adding Brian Burns would feel like the final piece of a puzzle he has been sketching since he arrived. People close to defensive coaching circles have been murmuring that Quinn wants a unit that reflects his own intensity. And Burns is the embodiment of that edge. This is not about collecting stars for attention, but about crafting a weaponized system. The rumor suggests that Quinn sees Burns as a multiplier, someone who amplifies scheme rather than simply benefiting from it. That distinction matters, because it hints at deeper conversations happening behind closed doors. When a coach and a player align philosophically, the result can be explosive. And that possibility is what has analysts leaning forward whenever this topic comes up. From a locker room perspective, the arrival of a player like Burns could instantly reset expectations. Even as a rumor, players are aware of the chatter, and it can influence mindset. Veterans start imagining roles shifting, younger players picture learning from an elite presence, and competition sharpens before a single practice snap. This psychological effect is often overlooked, but it is critical. Burns carries himself like a leader through action, not speeches, and that resonates in defensive rooms. The idea that Washington could be adding that kind of presence has people speculating about a cultural shift. Defenses thrive on identity, on believing they are the toughest unit on the field. Burns could be the spark that turns belief into conviction. Even opponents would sense it, because defenses with conviction play faster, hit harder, and recover quicker from mistakes. This is why the rumor feels heavier than usual, because it hints at transformation rather than simple improvement. Another angle that keeps surfacing is how this move could redefine Washington's broader strategy. For years, the franchise has been searching for stability and a clear direction. A commitment to building around a dominant defense sends a message about priorities. It suggests that the Commanders want to control games through pressure and physicality, forcing opponents to adapt rather than dictating terms themselves. Burns fits perfectly into that blueprint. He is not a complementary piece, he is a cornerstone. Speculation has centered on how resources would be allocated around him, how schemes would be adjusted to maximize his strengths, and how that would ripple through the rest of the roster. These are not casual fan thoughts, but deep analytical discussions, which again speaks to the credibility of the rumor. People do not dissect fantasies this thoroughly. They dissect possibilities that feel close enough to touch. The fear factor cannot be overstated, and it is something that keeps returning in conversations. A defense anchored by Burns under Quinn's guidance would not just aim to stop drives, but to intimidate. Intimidation is subtle but powerful. It shows up in hesitations, in rushed throws, in play calls that become conservative. The rumor has analysts imagining a Commander's defense that thrives on that fear, feeding off it week after week. That kind of unit becomes a talking point across the league, not because of flashy statistics, but because of the discomfort it causes. Opponents dread facing it, fans relish it, coaches respect it. Burns has that aura, and pairing it with Quinn's scheming could magnify it exponentially. This is why the word scary keeps surfacing. Not dramatic scary, but professional respect scary, the kind that alters preparation and mindset. As speculation stretches on, there is also an undercurrent of caution. Rumors have burned fan bases before, and seasoned observers remind everyone that nothing is official until it is. Still, even the cautious voices admit that this one feels different. It has layers, logic, and alignment that many rumors lack. The idea of Burns choosing Washington, of Quinn pushing for this move, of a defense being molded into something fearsome, all connect cleanly to dismiss outright. This is the kind of story that lingers because it makes sense, it fits the moment, the personalities and the needs involved, even if it falls apart. It reveals what Washington aspires to be. And that aspiration alone is telling. In the end, this rumor has already accomplished something powerful. It has shifted perception. The Commanders are being discussed as a potential defensive powerhouse, a team that could strike fear rather than hope for respect. Brian Burns is the symbol of that conversation. Whether he ultimately signs or not, Dan Quinn's defense is being imagined as something terrifying, cohesive and relentless until confirmation or denial arrives. The speculation will continue to grow, feeding content creators, analysts, and fans who sense that something significant is unfolding. And sometimes, in sports, the anticipation itself becomes part of the story, shaping expectations long before reality steps in to confirm or deny what everyone has been whispering about. If you're enjoying the coverage, make sure to smash that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts on the Commanders' latest moves. We want to hear from you. As this rumor continues to circulate, another fascinating dimension begins to surface, one that goes beyond schemes and talent and dives straight into power dynamics inside the organization. There is a growing belief among insiders that a move like this would signal a rare moment of alignment between front office vision and coaching ambition. Too often, teams chase names without a plan, but the speculation around Brian Burns suggests intentionality. Dan Quinn is not seen as a passive participant in this narrative. On the contrary, the whispers suggest he may be one of the driving forces, pushing for a defender who embodies his philosophy so completely that compromise becomes unnecessary. Burns would not arrive as just another star, but as an extension of the coaching staff on the field, someone whose presence enforces standards without words. That idea alone has fans and analysts imagining practices that feel more intense, meetings that carry more urgency, and a defense that holds itself accountable in ways that cannot be coached into existence. When talent and authority intersect naturally, cultures shift fast, even as speculation. This paints a picture of Washington becoming a place where defensive players want to be, a destination defined by aggression, clarity, and purpose. There is also a business and legacy angle quietly shaping this conversation, even if it is rarely stated outright. Brian Burns is a player aware of perception, of how careers are remembered beyond highlight reels. Joining a defense that could become iconic under Dan Quinn offers more than immediate impact. It offers narrative control. The rumor suggests that Burns may be looking for a stage where his influence is undeniable, where success is attributed not to being one piece among many, but to being the catalyst. Washington, with its hunger for a new identity, provides that canvas. This is why the speculation resonates. It feels like a mutual opportunity rather than a one-sided transaction. Burns gains the chance to define an era, while the Commanders gain a figure who can anchor their vision. These are the kinds of moves that rewrite trajectories. And that is why people are talking about it with such intensity. Even skeptics find themselves considering how quickly perception could flip if this rumor becomes reality. Ultimately, what keeps this speculation alive is not just excitement, but coherence. Every angle seems to support the idea, from scheme fit to organizational need to personal motivation. The Commanders have been searching for something that feels authentic, something fans can believe in without forcing optimism. Brian Burns represents authenticity in performance, a player whose impact shows up immediately and unmistakably. Dan Quinn represents clarity in purpose, a coach who knows exactly what he wants his defense to be. The rumor places these two forces on a collision course, and that is why it feels inevitable rather than hopeful until something definitive is announced. The story will keep evolving, growing louder with each discussion and breakdown, and even if reality takes a different turn, this moment reveals something important about where Washington believes it is headed. The idea of being feared again is no longer distant. It is being imagined vividly, passionately, and persistently, and sometimes that collective imagination is the first step toward making something very real. Thanks for tuning into District Command Central. Make sure to subscribe and follow us for all the Commanders news you need. Until next time, keep the faith and hail to the Commanders.